Dear friends, English literature, romantic poetry, Lord Byron, Don Juan, Canto 1. Brief questions with answers. Brief questions 53 to 110. Question 53. One was the conjugal strife between Jose and Inez exposed. Answer. Their conjugal strife was exposed when Inez called on some druggists and physicians to prove that her husband had gone mad. Question 54. Why did Inez decide to treat her husband as a bad man instead of proving him mad? Answer. As Jose had some intervals in his quarrel with Inez, she decided to treat him only as a bad man instead of proving him a mad man. Question 55. What did Inez say when people asked her why she tried to prove her husband mad or bad? Answer. She did not explain it, but only said that her duty towards both man and God required such conduct. Question 56. Why did Inez note the faults of her husband? Answer. She noted the faults of her husband in a diary. Question 57. Who did repeat Inez's speeches and why? Answer. The hearers, advocates, inquisitors, and judges repeated her speech for fun or old grudges. Question 58. What did the Spartan ladies do? Answer. The Spartan ladies were women of loose morality. When their husbands were killed, they chose their second husband without saying any word of regret for the first ones. Question 59. Why did people say what magnanimity? Answer. Inez calmly heard each fault of her husband and saw his agonies with sublimity. That is why people say, what magnanimity? Question 60. What is Byron's view on revenge? Answer. According to Byron, revenge is not a virtue, but it is not fault to take revenge if someone is hurt by other people. Question 61. How did Don Jose die? Answer. Don Jose died of the slow fever called the tertian. Question 62. What happened to Jose's mistresses after his death? Answer. After his death, one of his mistresses was taken by a Jew and the other by a priest. Question 63. Who was Numa? Answer. He was the legendary second king of Rome, famous for wisdom. Question 64. What did Juan inherit after his father's death? Answer. After his father's death, he inherited a century suit, messages, and lands. Question 65. Who became Juan's guardian after his father's death? Answer. Juan's mother, Dona Inez, became his guardian after his father's death. Question 66. What did Juan's mother decide to make him? Answer. Juan's mother decided to make him quite a paragon, an all-round man. Question 67. What did Juan learn? Answer. Juan learned the arts of riding, fencing, gunnery, and how to scale a fortress or a nunnery. Question 68. What did Inez desire most to teach Juan? Answer. Dona Inez desired most to teach him morality. Question 69. What was Juan not allowed to read? Why? Juan was not allowed to read the loose pages, that is, immoral subjects, lest he should become vicious. Question 70. Why was Juan puzzled in reading classical mythology? Answer. He was puzzled in reading classical mythology because of the filthy loves of gods and goddesses. Question 71. Who was Ovid? Answer. Ovid, before Christ, 43 to 18 after trade, was a Roman writer of love elegies. Question 72. Who was Sappho? Answer. Sappho was a Greek lyric poetess. Question 73. Who was Catullus? Answer. He was a Roman poet who wrote love poems, elegies, and satirical epigrams with equal success. Question 74. Who was Juvenal? Answer. Juvenal was a Roman satirist. Question 75. How was Juan seemed to be the right way to heaven? And so Juan seemed to be in the right way to heaven because half of the days were passed because half of his days were passed at church and the other half between his tutors and confessor and mother. Question 76. Why did Byron want to send his son, if he had any, to college? Answer. He wanted to send his son, if he had any, to college because he himself had education in college. Question 77. How was Juan at the age of 16? Answer. At the age of 16, Juan was tall, handsome, slender, and well-knit. Question 78. Who was Donna Julia? Answer. Donna Julia, wife of Alfonso, was one of the many friends of Inez. Question 79. How were Julius, Joan, and Beau? Answer. Julius, Joan, and was like that of Venus, and Beau was like that of Cupid. Question 80. How were Julia's eyes? What did they suggest? Answer. Her eyes were dark, which suggested her Moorish origin. Question 81. What rumor was there about Julia's grandmother? Answer. There was a rumor that Julia's grandmother gave birth to Julia's father illegally. Question 82. What did Julia's eye express? Answer. Her eyes are the expression more of pride than anger, and of love than pride and anger. Question 83. How were Julia's hair, brow, eyebrow, and cheek? Answer. Her hair was glossy, brow was bright, fair, and smooth, eyebrow was like the aerial bow, and cheek was of purple color. Question 84. Whom did Julia marry? Answer. She married Alfonso, a man of 50, though she was only 23. Question 85. What kind of husband does a lady of loose morality want? Answer. A lady of loose morality wants a husband below 30 years of age. Question 86. Why did Inez maintain intimacy with Julia? Answer. Donna Inez had a love affair with Alfonso before her marriage. To continue this affair, she maintained intimacy with Alfonso's wife, Julia. Question 87. But as for Juan, he had no more notion about what Juan had no notion. Answer. Julia had no notion about his increasing affection for Julia. Question 88. Trembling when met and restlessness when left. Whom is it said about? What does it indicate? Answer. It is said about Julia and Juan. They trembled when they met and became restless when they left each other. It indicates that they were being possessed by love for each other. Question 89. She prayed the Virgin Mary for her grace. Why prayed to Virgin Mary? Why? Julia prayed to Virgin Mary to solve her problem. She was gradually being attracted by Juan's physical charm. So for the sake of honor and religion, she prayed to Virgin Mary to prevent her from being attracted by Juan. Question 90. She vowed she never would see Juan more. But why did Julia then want to meet Juan? Answer. Julia wanted to meet Juan to overcome temptation because she thought that flight is base and cowardly. Besides, she wanted to maintain platonic love with him. Question 91. Who, according to Byron, suspects his wife? Answer. A real husband, according to Byron, suspects his wife. Question 92. Why did Inez allow Juan to mix with Julia? Answer. Inez allowed her son to mix with Julia to open Alfonso's eyes so that he mistrusts his wife, and Inez could continue her illicit affair with Alfonso. Question 93. Summer is indeed a very dangerous season. Why does Byron call the summer a dangerous season? Answer. Summer is a dangerous season because nature grows more merry in summer and it arouses physical attraction for the opposite sex. Question 94. What did Julia think sitting in a bower with Juan on the 6th of June? Answer. She thought of herself, of Julia's youth, and of her husband's old age. Question 95. What is rare at the age of 50? Answer. At the age of 50, a person hardly can exchange love. It may be impossible for him to satisfy the carnal desire of his wife if he is at 50. Question 96. What was Julia thinking when she threw one of her hands on Juan's? Answer. On the 6th of June, when they were sitting in a bower, Julia thought of the honor, virtue, and truth and love which she had for her husband. At the time, she threw one of her hands, thinking it was her own. Question 97. There was a dangerous silence in the hour. Why is the silence dangerous? Answer. On the 6th of June, about 6:30 or nearer 7, Julia and Juan sat in the silence of a pretty bower. The silence is dangerous because it encourages her love for him, the utter expectation to fulfill her thirst of carnal desire. Question 98. But who, alas, can love and then be wise? Why can't a lover be wise? Answer. The lovers cannot be wise in the time of making love because they become foolish when they are in love, as they cannot resist temptation. Question 99. Who was Xerxes? Answer. What did he declare? Answer. Xerxes was the king of Persia. He declared a reward for inventing a new pleasure for him. Question 100. What is sweeter than all other things? Answer. The first and passionate love is sweeter than all other things. Question 101. Who was Antonia? Answer. Antonia was the maidservant of Julia. Question 102. Why did Antonia knock at the door of Julia at midnight? Answer. At midnight, Julia was in her bed with Juan. When Antonia saw Alfonso was coming home, she knocked at the door to warn her mistress. Question 103. Julia began at once to scream and yawn and weep. When and why? Answer. When Alfonso arrives in Julia's bedroom, suspecting that there is someone with her, she began to scream and weep in order to pretend that there is none with her, and she is chaste. Question 104. Why did Julia charge Alfonso for insulting her? Answer. Julia charged Alfonso for insulting her because Alfonso and his friends searched her room everywhere in order to find an evidence of her infidelity. Question 105. Who tried to get Julia's love when she was unmarried? Answer. Several persons tried to get her love when she was unmarried, such as Count O'Reilly, Musico Cassani, Count Stroganoff, Lord Mount Coffeehouse, and 2 bishops. Question 106. How was Juan detected in Julia's bedroom? Answer. Juan was detected by his pair of shoes. Question 107. How did Juan manage to flee? Answer. Juan managed to flee, beating Alfonso in a duel, but at the cost of his only dress. Question 108. What happened to Juan and Julia when they are discovered in one bed? Answer. Julia was sent to European countries for higher education, and Julia was sent to a convent for purification. Question 109. What stanza form is used in Don Juan? Answer. The stanza form used in Don Juan is Ottava Rima, 8-line stanza, with the rhyme scheme AB, 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 CC. Question 110. What happened to Julia at the end of Canto 1? Answer. She was sent to a convent for purification. Thank you, friends, for